I sat next to her because she looked hungry. That was it. That was the whole reason. No grand plan, no diplomatic strategy, no carefully calculated social move. Just a girl sitting alone at the edge of a cafeteria the size of a football stadium, with nothing on her table and her eyes fixed on a data slate like she was trying to disappear into it. My name is Marcus Delgado. Everyone on Kepler Station calls me Mac. I am, by every official measure, the least important human being on this installation. I monitor access corridors, deliver data pads, translate basic Velthari phrases badly, and make sure visiting delegates don't accidentally walk into the wrong atmospheric zone and start choking. I passed my language aptitude exam by guessing correctly on 14 questions I didn't understand. I am 31 years old. I am from Albuquerque. I have never done anything remarkable in my life. That Tuesday, I almost didn't do this either. Kepler Station's cafeteria is divided into sections based on atmospheric requirements. Different species need different air, different gravity, different humidity. Humans sit in the neutral zone, which sounds heroic but is really just the beige corner with regular air and lighting that makes everyone look slightly unwell. I had my standard lunch, a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and something the kitchen called tomato soup that I had stopped questioning years ago, and I was heading toward my usual table when I noticed her. She was Velthari. I knew that much from the iridescence, a faint shimmer across her skin that shifted color the way oil on water does, blues and greens moving through each other slowly. Velthari are built to blend in. Their pigmentation evolved as camouflage on a world full of things that wanted to eat them. Most of the time, they're hard to spot even when you're looking, but she wasn't blending. She was just sitting very still, very small, at a table surrounded by empty chairs, in a section where at least 40 other Velthari students were clustered together at the opposite end. None of them were near her. I asked my colleague Yenza about it. Yenza is Drossian, which means she has 4 arms and extremely good hearing, and she knows everything that happens on this station, approximately 6 hours before it actually happens. She clicked her mandibles, the Drossian version of a shrug, and said, "That is Sarale Voss, the ward student. Her lineage documentation was flagged when she arrived. No one sits with her, because no one wants the political exposure." I didn't entirely understand the politics. I understood empty chairs. I picked up my tray and walked across the cafeteria. There's a membrane between the neutral zone and the Velthari section, a pressure barrier, totally harmless, just a mild tingle when you push through it, like static electricity across your whole body. I'd walked through it hundreds of times on delivery runs. I pushed through it now, crossed the open floor, and sat down across from her. She looked up. Her eyes were wide, triple-lidded, the deep color of water on a cloudy day. Her iridescence flickered immediately into silver and sharp blue, the Velthari equivalent of alarm, though I didn't know that yet. She stared at me like I had done something that did not compute, like a math problem that had returned an impossible answer. I said, in the Velthari I had learned from a station phrase guide and practiced very little. "You look like you haven't eaten. I have extra. Do you want half my sandwich?" There was a silence. Then she said, in English so clean and precise it made me feel personally embarrassed about my Velthari, "You pronounce the word for share as charvel. In my language, that means, I offer this in formal debt-binding ceremony." I looked at my sandwich. "So, is that a yes or a no?" Something happened at the corner of her mouth. A very small, very careful movement, like a door opening just slightly to check the weather. "It is a yes," she said. Her name was Sarale. Just Sarale, she told me when I asked. No second name offered. I didn't push. She had been on the station for 3 months. She was studying xenobiology. She found my lunch tray structurally confusing. She could not understand, from a scientific standpoint, why a fruit, a liquid, and a fat grain compound were presented as a unified meal, as if they naturally belonged together. I told her that in New Mexico, people put a green pepper sauce on absolutely everything, regardless of whether it belongs there, and if she wanted to discuss food that defied logic, we could start there. She took out her data slate and typed green chili into it, with the focused expression of someone recording a significant finding. We sat in the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. I ate my soup, She ate half my sandwich in small, careful bites, examining it between each one. When I got up to leave, she looked at her data slate and then back at me and said nothing. But she had eaten. I came back the following Tuesday. I don't know exactly when it became a habit. Somewhere around week 3, I stopped thinking of it as a choice and started thinking of it as just what Tuesdays were. I'd bring food, always a little extra, always something she hadn't tried before, and we'd sit across from each other, and she would critique my lunch with the precision of a scientist and eat it anyway, and I would learn things. She taught me the real Velthari expressions, not the ones in the phrase guide, the formal diplomatic language full of careful distancing, the actual ones. I learned that when a Velthari tilts their chin slightly left, they're signaling skepticism. I learned that rapid iridescence shifts mean strong emotion being actively suppressed. I learned that pressing 2 fingers to the collarbone means, I am choosing to trust you. She did it once, absent-mindedly, in the middle of week 3, while I was explaining something about human sports teams. I pretended not to notice. I noticed. I also started noticing other things. There were always 2 figures at the edge of her section, dressed in plain gray, never eating, never speaking to anyone. They kept a distance that looked casual but wasn't. When I walked in each Tuesday, their attention shifted to me briefly, then relaxed. I assumed they were academic observers or station security assigned to a foreign student. I noticed that when other students saw Sarale talking with me regularly, they started giving me a wide berth in the corridors. Not rudely, more like carefully. Which made no sense because I was the most inconsequential person on the station. I noticed that her questions were not student questions. They were the kind of questions someone asks when they're thinking through something very real. What do humans do when a rule is unjust, but breaking it causes more harm than following it? How do you stay loyal to someone whose decisions you disagree with? Do you think kindness without expectation is a form of strength or a form of foolishness? I answered all of them honestly, the way I answer most things, simply, because I'm not a complicated person. She wrote all of my answers in her data slate. Week 7, I was walking a delivery of data pads down the corridor outside the xenobiology labs when I heard raised voices. I followed the sound around a corner and found 3 Vorkai students standing over Sarale against the wall. Vorkai are large. They resemble something between a rhinoceros and a formal complaints department. Heavy, gray, and convinced they are correct about everything. They were not touching her, but they were crowding her, speaking in low, hard tones, and her iridescence had gone completely flat and pale, which I had learned was not a good sign. I walked into the corridor. I planted my feet. I held my stack of data pads against my chest. I said, in my terrible phrase, Guide Vorkai, is there a problem here? All 3 of them turned to look at me. They were substantially larger than me. I was aware of this. I continued making eye contact anyway, because I had already committed, and also because stepping backward at that point felt worse than staying. 4 seconds passed. I counted. Then the 2 gray-robed figures stepped forward from the far end of the corridor, which I hadn't noticed them entering. They each said one word in Vorkai. I didn't catch it. Whatever it was, the 3 large students went very still, then turned and walked away. Quickly. I turned to Sarale. Are you okay? She was looking at me with her triple-lidded eyes fully open, all 3 lids visible, her iridescence completely still and silver white. I had never seen her that color before. She didn't move for a moment. You stepped in, she said, knowing you would lose. I wasn't thinking about that part yet, I told her. She pressed 2 fingers to her collarbone. This time she held them there for 3 full seconds, and she looked at me while she did it. I tried to ask Yenza to look into the station records about Sarale's background. Yenza looked at me for a long time and said, Marcus, I have 4 children. I enjoy having this job. Please do not ask me that again. I tried the station archive system, which I had basic liaison access to. I typed in Sarale Voss and hit search. The response came back. Authorization level. Crown Imperial. Access denied. I stared at that for a long time. Crown Imperial was not a diplomatic clearance level. Crown Imperial was an interstellar governance classification. I had seen it mentioned once, in an orientation packet I had mostly skimmed during my 2nd year on the station. There were 11 entities in the known galaxy that operated at Crown Imperial authority. I could not immediately remember all of them, but I was fairly certain none of them were exchange students in xenobiology. I did not connect the dots quickly enough. That is, in retrospect, very on brand for me. Week 9, the station locked down. I knew something major had happened, because my supervisor ran past me in a corridor, which he had never done in 11 years. Vessel traffic stopped, the observation deck filled with off-duty staff pressing their faces to the glass. Coming in slow and enormous through the docking approach was a ship unlike anything I had seen in my career. Not a warship, not a transport, not a diplomatic cruiser. It looked like someone had tried to build a cathedral and then kept going. It was built to make you feel small, without threatening you, which is a very specific and extremely effective architectural philosophy. Every senior diplomat on the station mobilized. I got out of the way, as I generally do during major events, and went to the cafeteria and sat down and ate my Tuesday sandwich alone. Sarah sat down across from me 20 minutes later. She was dressed differently, formal, layered in deep blue and silver, the kind of clothing that has history in it. She sat very straight. 6 gray-robed figures had taken up positions around the perimeter of the neutral zone that I was now certain had been there longer than I had ever noticed. "My grandmother is here," she said. "Oh," I said, "that's nice. Are you too close?" A pause. "She rules the Velthari sovereignty, all 43 systems." I put down my apple. Sarah looked at the table, then back at me. Her voice had a careful quality, like she had tried many versions of this, and chosen the simplest one. She received a report, about the corridor, about Tuesdays, about a human liaison aide who sat down next to a ward student and shared his lunch. "It was half a sandwich," I said. "She wants to meet you." The supreme matriarch of the Velthari sovereignty was approximately 400 years old, which is middle-aged for her species. She was tall and completely still in the way that very old, very powerful things are still. Not rigidity, but the stillness of something that has learned to conserve itself. Her iridescence did not shift or flicker. It simply radiated, slow and golden, from somewhere deep beneath her skin, like light coming up through deep water. She received me in the station's formal chamber. I was wearing my regular uniform. There was a small tomato soup stain near the left pocket that I had not managed to remove. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said in English, "My granddaughter has not extended trust to anyone since she arrived here." The Velthari read intention through proximity. She kept everyone at distance, because distance felt like the only safe thing. 3 months, she sat alone. "Until someone sat down anyway," I said. "Until someone sat down anyway." The golden light beneath her skin deepened briefly. "What do you want from your life, Corporal Delgado?" I thought about it honestly. To be in the right place at the right time. Not the important moments. Other people handle those, the ones in between. Someone looks lost, I know the corridor. Someone looks hungry, I have half a sandwich. I'm good at the margins. She studied me the way you study something you are deciding to trust. The sovereignty is sending a permanent youth delegation to this station. Sarah will remain. She will require a designated human liaison, someone with the atmospheric clearance to accompany her across all station sections. Someone whose presence she has already registered as safe. She paused. The position includes a pay grade increase and Crown Imperial adjacent clearance. "I accept," I said. Sarah was waiting outside the chamber when I came out. She had changed back into her regular student clothes. Her iridescence was doing the soft, anxious blue that I now recognized well. "So," I said, 43 star systems. "Yes, you let me explain green chili to you for 9 weeks. Your explanations are educational." "Sarah," she pressed 2 fingers to her collarbone. "I did not know how to tell you. And then too much time had passed, and I did not want you to look at me differently. I thought about that for a moment. I'm still going to bring sandwiches on Tuesdays." That small, careful door opened just a little wider. "They are structurally confusing," she said. "Yeah," I said, "but you always eat them." I never set out to do anything important. I set out to eat my lunch, and noticed someone who hadn't eaten hers. The galaxy runs on ancient power and grand politics, and ships that look like moving cathedrals. And I've learned more about all of it in the past 9 weeks than in 11 years before. But underneath all of it, every species I've ever met runs on the same thing. You notice when someone is sitting alone, you sit down, you share what you have. Everything else is just details.